Hello everybody, this is the Sequence Lifecycle kubeadm office hours. Today is the 11th of December 2019, and this is before Christmas, but we decided to have our planning session for the next cycle, 118. And we already have a document that I filled with some items. So let's begin by sharing the screen. All right. Please add your names to the list of participants and potential items for the planning session today. All right, do we have any new participants on the call? I don't see anybody new. Okay, so I have a couple of quick PSAs here. So 117 was released like a couple of days ago. No major hiccups, release notes needed some tweaks. We had to edit some things in the release notes because some sort of a mixture happened between action required items and items that are without action required, but we managed to fix that. Also, PSA is that George Alacron was appointed for release lead of 118. George is helping a lot in SIG testing and testing areas, so he definitely deserves this position to try to help the release process for this cycle. And I also wanted to mention that I already created a kubeadm housekeeping issue for 118. And this is a help wanted issue. I'm going to assign myself to this first item here, but I wanted other folks to try to jump in and help with these items as well. All right, so anybody has any PSAs?
I officially got some time to help with kubeadm this quarter, so you should actually see a lot more from me.
All right, thanks, Marek. Yeah, we seem to have lost the agenda. Somebody added it back. All right. Now, going to the planning for today. So a quick legend explaining what the priorities means here. The priorities mean here is that we basically have a list of items. We're going to discuss each item. And at the end of the discussion for this particular item, we have to assign a priority for it. So P0 is the highest priority. P4 is something like needs evidence. It's the lowest priority. And also, when working on something, we have to assign people to them. Some items we transfer from the previous cycle, and they already have assigned people to them. But if more people want to help, there is opportunity to add you here instead of the question mark. All right, so the first item of the list is something that we promised to the SIG architecture, and that's moving kubeadm out of the Kubernetes repository to the kubeadm repository. And we have a tracking issue for this. It's here. And also I managed to compile a pretty big Google document about all of the potential problems we are going to face with this. And we got a lot of comments from people. Thank you everybody for commenting. Now, there's a question whether we should continue commenting here, solidify our decisions and create a cap, or we should potentially keep this in a Google Doc form and don't create a cap for kubeadm, move it out. It's a pretty big question for us.
I think we iterated enough to have a cap that people can see if they're not on the mailing list or something like that. I think that a cap would be more visible.
I'm +1 for a cap because also this is the first project that is doing this, so it will be a good starting point for others doing the same.
I suppose the cap will contain the final result of the discussions, right? That's the idea.
Yes, changes can still happen on the cap level, but the idea is to have this like finalized and approved by a lot of people and for visibility to others.
Yeah, I think that will help because the current Google Documents has a lot of discussion and you have to go through all of those to understand what's the final decision.
Yes, the benefit of the Google Doc is that it's actually easier to discuss stuff.
That is true.
Okay, so my proposal here I'm already assigned to this because I have to help in a lot of areas there. So who else wants to help with this effort?
I can help on this since I started on it.
I'll try my best. I'm working on this on my own time, so
I can try to be helpful too.
All right. And my proposal here is that based on our pretty much, I don't know how to say this, like we said to SIG architecture that we are going to do this in 1.18. So there's some things to discuss with other SIGs, like SIG release, SIG docs, but on our side, maybe this is the highest priority for 1.18. And I was proposing P0 here.
I'm definitely +1.
Yes.
All right. Let's move to the next item. This is corporate config management and refactors. Rusty created a cap for this, and he already has some PRs in progress. Apart from these PRs, Rusty, do you think that we're going to have more?
Like, you mean further development into this?
Yeah, for the 1.18 cycle, do you think that we have to do more work in refactors?
Well, no, actually, so these aren't any refactors. Actually, these basically add a little bit more features to the previous refactor, which was like the real big deal. And the rest is basically just polishing the UX.
Okay, so you're not going to need any help from other folks here, I guess?
No, probably not, at least on the functional part. Probably there will be some need for help for documentation later in the cycle, but we can figure this out.
All right.
Rusty, just this topic reminded me, are you making any changes to the kubelet component config management?
No, at least not on the kubelet. I'm signed
For
up
like the
for kubeproxy, but the kubeproxy component config proved tougher than it should be, and possibly like should be investigated in like some of the next cycles.
Okay.
But effectively, these changes basically allow for kubeadm to deal much better with component configs, especially when they shift in versions.
Yeah, I have to. You already landed some stuff in 118 master, so I'm rebasing on that right now. It looks good. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah.
All right. So in terms of priorities, I guess we have to complete this in the A180 cycle.
Well, mostly yes, but I do think that this is probably P1 or P2, probably more like P2, simply because we are not pressured at this point because of any new component config version, but probably in the next cycle there will be Alpha 2, like in the 1.19 cycle for kubelet and for kubeproxy, sorry, and this may be actually good to land in this release cycle just so that I don't have to work on these two things in the same cycle.
Okay, so based on the fact that you're the only person assigned, I'm going to give this your recommendation of P2.
Yeah, thank you.
All right, add-on installer Stealthy Box. Something that we brought on and on again is that the cap is still in provisional form. Did you manage to respond to the Fabrizio questions in the cap?
I started responding to the feedback, but it's not fully complete yet. Daniel Holbach, also from Weaveworks, has been pushing some edits to this to address some of the feedback. I just pushed up an upgrade implementation to the PR. The reason I'm working on the PR in concert with the KEP is so that like the ideas are fully fleshed out in the KEP, because it's a rather large feature that has many UX touch points throughout all of kubeadm's lifecycle. So, but yeah, I'm prioritizing getting back to a lot of these questions and clarifying with docs in the KEP.
Mm-hmm. I also saw the docs PR. It's quite unusual to send it before the cap is even approved yet.
Yeah, some other folks were asking for docs, so I just put it up there to start working on it, and I marked it as a hold.
I see. Yeah, so I guess we have to have all the questions answered, and probably me and Fabrizio have to go again at those diagrams that we created for all the interaction with kubeadm between the add-on installer kubeadm. And I guess we have to say that this is the kept is at this point implementable.
Yeah, if you would like me to bump the kept to implementable with all of the other feedback, right? Then I figured at some point we'd make that as a separate PR, but whatever you think is appropriate. We've only done the kept thing like twice. So.
I have looking back at the comment and the PR, I think that we should, before setting the cap implementable, we should set again the goal or the target of this journey. Because if the goal is to replace the add-on management, that means that this cap should aim for feature parity from what we have now in kubeadmin and what the add-on installer will offer in the future. If we want to drop what is
Fabrizio cutting out for other people?
Yeah.
Yeah, he is.
Okay. Yeah. I do agree with the comments on feature parity. We need alternate or equivalent mechanisms for all of the ways that we currently treat the add-ons.
Okay, so I think we should proceed here with all the questions being answered and maybe continue the discussion with Fabrizio on the KEP.
Yeah, I'm happy to do that. I am looking at this. Thank you for the active conversation.
Yeah, this is kind of hard to assign priority without the KEP being implementable. I'm not sure how to define this.
Yeah, it's a large feature with a lot of touch points. You could just give it like a P2.
Okay. Do you request any help from the people who are present?
I would be happy to pair and divvy up this work. Yeah. And then there's all of the terrific folks who are working in the add-ons sub-project as well. They technically are working on this in a way, but
Okay, do you want me to assign Daniel as well to the list of?
yeah, that's a very fair assignment there. The whole block.
Okay. All right. Machine readable output for more commands. So we have the cap is implementable. We have a PR from Ed Bartosz that we like me and Rossi sort of blocked on it. Sorry, Ed, but I'm not sure if Ed is on the call. Yes.
I'm here. Yeah.
Yeah. Yes. So sorry we blocked on the PR, but it was a very clear. Like we requested this last minute change, streaming versus non-streaming. And the structures, in my opinion, personally, got a bit weird. And,
Yeah, I agree. I will look at it again. We'll try to come up with something better. Then I don't like it either.
so right now we have the structure output for images. This one is for upgrade plan. Do you think that apart from this PR, we can also merge something else in this cycle?
Yeah, I'm planning at least this image information, this kubeadm config images list, or like.
Yeah, but we already have this one. It's already merged.
No, we have only tokens, as far as I know.
Sorry. Okay, so config images is the next one.
Yeah.
And potentially plan and also config images is the two items we can get in 118.
Yeah, yeah, that's pretty much it. I don't know if I have time. I can work on something bigger like init or other like big interactive commands, but I cannot promise that. So, but those two should be ready in this cycle.
Okay. Do you look for help, or are you going to work on these PRs alone?
I'm okay with that, but if anybody wants to help, I'm also like everybody is welcome here. So.
Ed, I was going to work on the upgrade apply phases, but I would love to help you once that's done.
Mm-hmm. Okay, sounds good to me.
Okay, so I'm going to put this at P2 as well. Any objections?
No, looks good to me.
Okay. All right. The next item is upgrade apply phases. So the cap is also implementable. We have Marek, to what state were you able to get this?
So I made a couple of kind of I made some stuff that I actually want to go over, Lubomir, with you. So I made a couple of PRs that kind of do some of the cleanup that's needed to implement the phases. And I'd actually love to do like an hour sometime with you to go over them, because I know that you've done this before. But yeah, I'm moving forward with it. I hope to have the first of a set of PRs in by the end of December.
Yeah, so, okay, thanks. Going back to retrospective, like for the init and join phases, we were able to assign multiple people to work on individual phases. Once the runner, the phase runner was already gotten to a working state for apply, basically we had multiple people work on the phases. So if you are able to send this primary PR, we can then start delegating the work to others.
Yeah.
And then we can also make some decisions like, hey, do we want to overlap these phases? Like what code goes in one phase, what code goes in another. So I'm going to ask who else wants to potentially help with the individual phase work?
You can put my name down here. I'm familiar with the recent code here since it has to do with add-on installer. So I'm really happy to see that somebody wants to work on this, and I'm happy to pair on it and review.
Okay. Also, Tunde is saying in chat that he wants to help. All right. So here, based on the amount of requests we've gotten from people to be able to skip the kubeproxy during upgrade, I want to give this a slightly a higher priority than P2. So like important long-term is, so P2, oh no, it's P2 is important long-term, right? Yes, P0. Yeah, so.
Yeah, I'd say it's a P1 for sure, even just from a code health perspective.
This means that P1 means that we have to complete it in the 118 cycle, pretty much. So unless, Marek, if you're not comfortable with this assumption.
I think that's fine. I think that's easily doable.
Okay, let's give it P1. We can then go back to the whole list and decide to adjust the priorities if needed. So Rossi, this is the V1 beta 3 item. We have an issue. Actually, I created like a filter here for all the API changes we have. And the most recent one was where basically Andy Goldstein recommended that we should have image pool policy defined in the kubeadm configuration file. Because some people want to always pull the images, some people want to pull only if missing locally, for instance, or maybe never. So basically, he suggested we should add the image pool policy in our config. So this is potentially another API change. The other changes are object meta, the things that we punted from last cycle. Rossi, do you think that we should add the new type in 118?
So I think that we should reconsider adding v1 bet3 in 118, but we also need to reconsider object meta and like the rest of the stuff that we actually figured out is probably not really needed. And for example, if I can actually go out without object meta, it will be much more like sensible, at least from kubeadm's perspective. And if we are actually left only with image pool policy and with removal of the use hypercube image boolean, then it's probably not worth to do a whole new version, given that we only add a couple of new fields.
I think that before deciding on this point, we need to sync again with Cluster API and discuss again with them how to make easier for the config consumer consume different versions.
Yeah, I think I agree with that.
So Lubomir, my proposal is to punt a little bit on for some time on this point and try to have a separate meeting to decide if it is worth and how.
Yes, me and Fabrizio had a private meeting to discuss this particular topic, and it really is a complicated one. I tried to comment that this is not a Kubernetes problem. This problem existed since software started being versioned. And it's really tricky. So basically, you want me to leave these question marks here and leave this undecided for now?
Yes.
All right. So this is the kubeadm operator. Fabrizio implemented basically a set of PRs that are work in progress in the kubeadm repository. but the cap is still provisional. So, Fabrizio, do you want to prioritize this particular work?
I think that it's fine to have it as SP3, and because it is separate a work which is let me say aside from the main kubeadmin priorities. Nevertheless, I will try to get something working, because basically what we have now is more or less scaffolding for the operator part, and I want to give it to get into something working, and yeah, it will be. But what is blocking for me in now is that it takes really long for PR to be reviewed, and this is slowing me down a little bit.
Yes. So in the kubeadm.
And by the way, the fact that the cap is provisional was agreed as a way to being more free when doing the prototype.
Yes. So the bots automatically assign folks. Like Yasin commented here, SEDEQ is also in the list. And also SEDEQ, I added him here because he's already he's already helping in this effort for unit testers list. But do you, Fabrizio, are you looking for more people to be like dedicated reviewers in this effort?
I'm interested in joining here.
Okay.
I can try helping with reviews.
Okay.
I think that the groundbreaker for this effort will be to have to try to define the high-level API, the declarative approach, and so maybe that it makes sense to schedule some dedicated meeting and focus on the problem.
Yes, a question I have for Tim, who is on the call. Me and Fabrizio also managed to discuss this topic quickly, and I was wondering whether we can mark the cap implementable if we can assume that we can go with a primary stage of having not a declarative approach at the beginning, but then transition to a declarative approach later.
So long as it's denoted as alpha, I don't see a problem. So just denote the standard stages of deployment, so it's buyer beware, right?
Yes. Fabrizio, do you think that you can adapt the cap to?
Okay, I don't see it is the status of the cap as a blocker, but I have no problem in changing to implementable.
Yes, because at some point we have to deploy in the public with this alpha state.
Yeah, and let's wait. Let's punt a little bit because I fear that deploying the operator will add a lot of complication on top of the migration of the move of kubeadmin. For instance, we have to manage images and so on and so forth. So let's keep this as a low priority.
I was going to ask the same thing. Like, is this going to dovetail with the move of kubeadm on a tree?
Yeah, technically kubeadm is going to join the operator. One aspect of kubeadm joining the repository is that we now have to start branching everything in there. So the operator is going to be branched with the kubeadm code.
Does it make sense for the operator to be in the same code base or its own thing?
I would say yes, because they're going to be lockstep with capabilities. If eventually maybe out of tree, but I think until we get it to GA where the decoupling is super clear with regards to the API, because don't forget our API is still beta, right? And we potentially could have impactful changes on the API. Once the contract for the APIs is clear, then I think it makes sense if people decide that that's what they want to do. But I think for the time being, because there will be a high degree of churn and they will be in lockstep with one another, that it doesn't make sense in my opinion.
Okay.
All right. A lot of people signed up to work on this to help. Let's see how it goes and if it conflicts with the move of kubeadm. The next item is Windows support. We've been dragging this for a while. So something that SIG Windows asked me personally to help with is to get the worker node upgrades working. And I think it's a matter of calling the kubeadm upgrade node command at this point. It's not anything special. But I just need to find the time to do this. And from there, we're kind of blocked. We want to support this feature at some point properly. It's still in alpha, but we also blocked on end-to-end tests. And for end-to-end tests, we need people to sign up for creating the infrastructure and also like getting the deployer for tests working. And this is not something that is on us technically, but I can try helping out. If some people on the call want to help in this effort in terms of knowledge about Windows, PowerShell, and things like that, I can add you to the list, but it's not a strict requirement. This is something on me. I wasn't expecting anybody to jump on board anyway, so. So the priority is tricky here because it's not only on us. I want to give this a P3, but I'm definitely going to try to find the time for it.
Lubomir, I can help if there are some changes on Kinder, so on our testing part.
Yeah, we're probably not going to use Kinder at all. That's the.
Yeah, that was my first stuff, but if you change your mind and it turns out that Kinder can help, I will be happy to support you.
Okay, I'm going to add you if needed. Let's leave this like so. Honestly, I need some PowerShell experts because my PowerShell knowledge is like close to non-existent.
I cannot help there, sorry.
All right. So this is something that I sort of fabricated this item because we accumulated a number of changes related to core DNS that we want to make. We have some different issues logged in the tracker, and this is the same. These are the same like the problems here. So basically, our upgrades currently stomp the existing user modified core DNS deployment object. For instance, if they use an autoscaler to change the replica count, we stomp this. So somebody from VMware actually, I'm sorry, I think Peter, I forgot the name, sorry. He sent a PR to fix this, but they only fixed the replica problem. And it becomes a question like, should we respect the existing deployment? Because currently we completely replace it during upgrades. My opinion was that we should respect it. So that's like one of the problems. The other problem is that the replica count, like Rafa created a separate document for this. How should we handle the replica count? Should we scale it up when new nodes are joining? Like, should we use a daemon set? Like, there are different ways to approach this problem. And the final one is kubeDNS is becoming a maintenance burden for us with all the migration stuff and all some of these changes we want to do right now. We also have to manage kubeDNS, and it feels to me like probably kubeadm doesn't have any kubeDNS users at this point. And also it's possible to skip the add-on. So this is this is basically related to the work that Marek is going to do with a upgrade apply. If they skip the add-on, they can do whatever they want. They can deploy a custom one, and kubeDNS could be this custom DNS server that they deploy instead. So I want to potentially get some work done in some of these items in 118. So I'm assuming, Rafa, you want to help in this?
Yes, yes, I want to be there.
Somebody else?
I can help too.
Yasin?
Yeah, you can add me too.
Who was before that? Sorry?
It was me, Sandeep Rajan.
Of course. Yes. So Rajan, I wanted to discuss with you like some of the things that even if they are like the right things to do, like should we preserve the existing deployment, things like that.
Yeah, it's kind of tricky. Of course, we know that if someone makes changes to the deployment, we see that when we upgrade, a lot of things are replaced during the upgrade. But if we need to add some things to the new deployment, like we did a couple of releases ago for the readiness probe, I think, then we need to support such cases as well.
Yes, so maybe the balance here should be we preserve a list of fields from the original deployment.
Yeah.
Okay. I'm going to mark this with P2 because based on the fact that we like get the occasional user reports, so it's definitely some of these are problems for users currently.
I'm okay with P2. And just one comment, I think that at the end we should somehow merge how we manage core DNS with how we manage component config. So for instance, the concept of user-defined configuration or kubeadm provider configuration. And the last my comment is I'm not really sure that we have to deprecate kubeDNS, or at least I will see the problem of kubeDNS in a separate with a lower priority than P2.
Yes, this was my proposal to mark it as deprecated 118, which because this is GA functionality is going to take 3 cycles at minimum for us to decide if you want to remove it. But I wanted to deprecate it 118 because it's just difficult to manage these 2 options at this point, given, to my knowledge, one of the options is not used at all at this point.
I think we can kick off the deprecation cycle, and users have basically 3 releases to object or at least say if they're using it.
I agree with that, and I can take that for the deprecation on 118, if that's fine for you.
Okay.
So another possibility is to postpone it a little bit and basically include it in a survey, which probably needs to be like marketed more on the KubeCon EU.
Yeah, so let's decide how to proceed here with...
I would like to almost run the survey through the whole SIG because there's broader questions beyond kubeadm that I think are really important. There's a lot of use cases for cluster API, as well as I want to understand a lot of friction points that exist for configuration for other providers. So like, I think if somebody I'll happily work on this with somebody else, but I think I want broader feedback across the SIG where possible here.
Tim, do you think that we should create separate service for cluster API kubeadm?
there's a lot of overlap from the end user perspective. Like there will be a lot of overlap. So we could have sections in a survey where we could have very specific kubeadm questions, but then there's broader like cluster management lifecycle questions that they're going to want answers to. So.
Yeah, actually the survey tools, I think they allow us to branch questions. For instance, are you using Cluster API? If you're using it, you have 10 questions to answer. Like, we can branch the surveys.
Exactly, I think that'd be perfect.
Okay. So I guess this is a P1 because it has to be in 118.
I'm happy to help in the survey.
I definitely want to help with that.
I can also help there.
I'd also help.
I guess I'm not adding myself here. Like, I mean, everyone should help in this. All right, it's P1. The next one is remove cluster status from the kubeadm config. And Fabrizio, you said a cap for this already. So basically here, the cap needs review. That's my understanding at this point.
Yeah, but I think there is a more or less a good agreement on the cap. The main open point is if we can deprecate, we can basically remove cluster status from the config map immediately, or if we have to support it, even if we know that it does not work in all the cases. So this is the main open question, but
can you please refresh my memory, giving an example of some of the cases where it doesn't work correctly?
Okay. So the story is that in the cluster status, we are maintaining the list of the endpoints, and we use these for when joining new etcd. But what if a node is removed without doing a reset, the list of endpoints gets stale, and this creates problem when you join a new etcd node. And this cap is basically proposed to remove the list, and instead of looking at the list, we look at the static pod that are the etcd pod that are in the clusters. So we instead of maintaining a list, we do cluster inspection of the cluster, and this should work. But there are some comments that if we are going to remove the cluster status, we are going to break user.
Yes. So do you think it's feasible to have this for a period of time duplicated?
For me, it is feasible, even it is weird from my point of view to maintain something that we know doesn't work. But I think that I'm fine to maintaining it and telling and issuing an action required to the user that they should adapt their code and drift away in 1 or 2 cycles from the cluster status.
It's kind of weird because this is an implementation detail, and if it was possible to hide certain fields in a config map, we should have done it, but it's not possible to do it. So
yeah,
it's open. Everybody has access to this field.
Yeah, for instance, I know that some folks in Cluster API are looking at this field. I talked with them and they are happy about this change, but I don't know if there are other users outside in the wild that use this information. So probably we have to maintain it and for some time.
In our case, I mean, we are happy with this removal, but we are using it because we are using Cilium and we have to provide the etcd endpoint. So we were using this list instead of listing the etcd pods for providing this to Cilium for its configuration. But I mean, we can move to listing etcd or doing whatever other strategy. But yeah, I guess as we, others might be doing something similar.
Okay, so I will update the cap in order to have a deprecation period for the current cluster status while kubeadmin internally switch to the new method.
I was searching for a mention for external HCD. In this case, it does not require any changes or annotations, correct?
It does not require any change for external SSD. But I will take note and make a double check.
Okay. Thank you. Fabrizio, what do you think is the priority for this?
Well, we had in the past some several problems for the user due to this config map. So I will keep this as at least P2.
Okay.
If you need any help, Fabrizio, there, just ping me. I can help.
Thank you.
All right. The final item is kubelet kubeproxy node group specific config. Lee, can you provide some details on that, please?
Yeah, I had a chat with a few people at the Contributor Summit about the usability issues that come with using kubelet config and the hacks that folks have to do to modify system D units so they can get instance-specific kubelet config with kubeadm, or just disabling the feature altogether using various workarounds. If the reality is that there's not one kubelet config that can be applied to all nodes in every cluster. So like some users have clusters where nodes need different configurations for their kubelets, and we'd like to be able to expose some mechanism for people to do this in kubeadm, since kubeadm wants to manage this configuration for people, or at least have an answer. Yeah.
So I swear, I know Fabrizio says that it didn't happen, but I swear when we first put this in there, when Lucas was around, that there was an option to specify a different location that plumbed through the kubelet that allowed you to have multiple configurations. So that way you could upload multiple comps for different kubelets, like if you had node pools, for example. I have a node pool of like certain types of nodes called X and certain types of nodes called Y, and you'd be able to point them at those different pools. So this pool of nodes could then point to those two different configs. But it might have been lost in translation somewhere or lost somewhere in the PR process when we first put it in. But I do think that we should add that capability, or we had that capability maybe for a brief window of time, but we did talk about it.
Yes, and I'm pretty sure there is also already an issue for this. I'm searching for it.
Lee, is this like instance versus shared config, which is something that I and Mike discussed something like last summer?
I mean, it's certainly the most precise thing you can enable somebody to do is have an instance per node, but then there's that middle ground, like it's almost a fallacy to say that there is one shared config, because that's not the like topology that people use in their clusters. Like they have different kinds of nodes. sometimes. So it's there's certainly a UX available here or possible where you could have multiple shared configs for different groups of nodes, like Tim is suggesting.
Yeah, so we were actually having a similar discussion during the kubeproxy KEP design process for the graduating kubeproxys config to beta. And we figured out that instead of doing on a per component basis, basically specifying what is an instance specific field or what is like a field that can actually be shared between several instances, we probably need to do a separate KEP as part of workgroup component standard and sort of do a design blueprint for all of the components to follow.
Yeah, the contributor who prompted this conversation from working group component standard mentioned some of the kubelet flags that have not been migrated to the config yet. And that surfaces, I think, this exact same issue. And then you said you were speaking about it from a kubeproxy perspective, I believe. So I agree and would be happy to be involved with that kept on the mechanisms that don't exist yet that are necessary for users to do whatever is necessary to maintain the config for different permutations.
Yeah, I think I can help on that, but I don't think that this is really kubeadm tied, so it's probably on the agenda of our group component standard.
So you would think that we need to build some more generic tooling first before the UX gets fixed in kubeadm? Because I would say it's pretty broken right now.
Yeah, we probably need like a strategy for all the components and then start fixing the UX.
Sounds good to me.
By the way, there are also issues in kubeadmin for this because currently we are not storing all the node specific settings, and this creates a problem, for instance, for upgrades and also for the operator.
Are we blocked on anything specific there?
Blocked now, no, because basically now there is no support for change the cluster. But if we want to support change the cluster, this is something that we need.
Yeah, okay.
So, Rossi, Fabrizio, do you want me to add you to this list and also assign priority?
Thanks. This is an important design topic. So
yes.
Okay, and important long term, maybe. Right. I just want to mention again that I don't like a lot of things about the kubelet configuration. It claims to be shared across nodes. Some parts of it are supposed to be node specific, but I think there are some problems in the design of the configuration itself. And once those are resolved, maybe we can proceed with having workarounds in kubeadm too. Same goes for kubeproxy. Right, we have 5 minutes. Any last topics to discuss? All right, we can end the meeting sooner and give room for the question API. Thanks, everybody. See you again next week. Bye.
Bye.